Hello, good people. Welcome back to the Cancer and Comedy Podcast. This indeed is a podcast where we look to offer people who are impacted by cancer and other adversities in life to cope with hope and humor. And we're really excited today to have Steve Garrity as our guest. Steve Garrity is the author of Great Fruit: How Cancer Led to Living a More Fruitful Life. Steve transformed his life after a cancer diagnosis, and the lessons he learned formed the foundation of being a husband, a parent, a business leader, and living a more fruitful life. He got a degree in finance from University of Georgia and spent 20 years in leadership coaching and developing others. Lives in Tampa, Florida. You can find him at stevegarrity.com. Garrity is spelled Garraty.com. Steve, welcome to our conversation here today, my friend.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for having me on the show. Excited to be here.
Awesome. It's great to make your acquaintance, get learn to know a little bit about your story a little bit. And there's some unique aspects of it, but it really starts when you were a pretty young man. We're getting to what your age is now, but you were a pretty young man when you heard those three terrible words that many people who come on our show have, and those words, you have cancer. So let's go back for a minute. Tell me a little bit about that story. Set the framework of what we're going to talk about here today, about how things started when you were kind of a young man, and kind of set the framework for us.
Sure. Yeah. I guess for reference, 58 today, and this happened when I was.
Well, happy birthday, my friend.
Thank you. It'll be, sorry, my birthday is not today, but turning 59 this year. So I'm currently 58.
Okay.
It's been 40 years since I was diagnosed. But yeah, a little backdrop. I was not the best teenager, Brad, and a lot of people might say that, like they might say they're not a good golfer, but I truly was not a good teenager. Was getting in a lot of trouble my junior and senior year, experimenting with substances I shouldn't have been. Just was really headed down a bad path, and I had a lump forming in the side of my neck, and kind of ignored it, and didn't feel any pain or discomfort. It just was starting to extrude out the side of my neck. And so went in and got a biopsy done on July 3rd of 1986. And the next day, the surgeon called to say those three words you just mentioned: you have cancer. So found out I had Hodgkin's, and then went in and got some CAT scans and MRIs and x-rays, and they determined it had spread not only to my neck, but my chest and stomach, making it stage 3. And then I embarked on a year, about 10 months of chemotherapy.
So how would you describe kind of your emotional state? How would you describe that moment? What was going through your mind, your body, your head?
When the surgeon called to tell me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Probably a testament to where I was in life. But one of the things the surgeon said was no drinking and no partying for the next year and maybe forever.
That got your attention, I assume, right?
That's what upset me. And so we were sitting around the kitchen table, and my mother and father and 2 siblings were all distraught over the cancer. I was distraught over the no drinking and no partying, because that's pretty much all I cared about at that point in my life.
Well, you even said something to the effect of you were running kind of full speed over a cliff, and this experience kind of came a turning point that eventually led you to making some changes in your life, and eventually writing a book, which you've done here relatively recently. But that was an interruption in your life. So tell us a little bit about the chaos you might have gone through, or the sense of punishment, or a sense of losing out. What kind of things were you feeling at that time, and how did you start to deal with it, good or bad, in those early stages?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, Brad, I was, being that I was going down this destructive path, I was hanging out with a group of friends that were probably not the best, group to be hanging out with for the most part. And at 18, I think we had all just graduated high school. So everybody was enjoying the summer and celebrating and going to parties all the time, and ready to go off to school, to college in the fall for most folks. And so after I was diagnosed, again, partying was kind of everything to me at that point. So I had to give that up, even though I tried to cling to it for a couple of weeks. But most of my friends or drinking buddies, if you will,
Right.
dis- disappeared as soon as I got sick. And so, in the very beginning, it was a pretty lonely start. I had a girlfriend for a couple years. We'd break up and get back together, but we lasted about a month or two, maybe a couple months after I was diagnosed, and then we broke up. She actually called it off, and so it was. Yeah, I would say socially, it was changed. Everything that was important to me from a social standpoint, um, and just it was kind of devastating to go through that. And then when I started chemotherapy, the first session, I didn't get sick and
Hmm.
really started to, I felt invincible before the
Okay.
surgeon called to say you have cancer. And after that first treatment of chemotherapy, I felt like, hey, this is going to be a breeze. This is not going to be as bad as everybody says it's going to be. And then on the second chemo treatment, it was I was vomiting halfway through and
Kick
was sick all day. And then each
kind of
session,
knocked you in your butt, it sounds like, really, huh?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Well, yeah, it's my understanding that, you go through this bad time. You're a young guy. You're no longer partying. Your world's been turned upside down. Lose the girlfriend, the whole bit here. Several bad things happening to you. And yet I understand that, was it to both your parents or maybe your mother kind of got you started journaling? And that was maybe a part of the process to get you going in a different way by writing things down. Tell a little bit about that, how that got started, and if that's still a part of your life.
Yeah, so it was my mother that probably pushed that, but both my parents had suggested keeping a journal. Again, really because I didn't have that many people to turn to early on in the in the process. And so it was kind of a way of, it was therapeutic to write down what I was going through and what I was feeling. And so by the end of that 10 months or so that I went through chemo, I filled up a pretty thick notebook of my thoughts, feelings, experiences, everything I was going through. And so that helped quite a bit. Once I was declared cancer free in the spring of what would have been my first year at college, um, I went off to college and that journal got put aside. I didn't touch it for probably about 5, 6 years. And then eventually I picked it up and started cleaning it up, if you will, and kind of organizing it. And it eventually became the framework for my book that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
yeah.
so basically, you've spent 30 plus years in a sense, at least writing down thoughts that eventually made it into your book in some form or another. Is that a fair framework?
Yeah, the book is part one and part two. Part one is kind of what happened in that experience, what led up to it, the experience itself. And I would say the journal is what became part one.
I see.
Part two is because it took me 37 years to finish the book and publish it. Life kept getting in the way. So I'm in sales. I lead sales teams. I've always traveled a lot. Have two kids. They're grown now, but with sports and school, life just kept
Right.
getting in the way of writing. And so I would pick it up and then I would put it down for a few years and not touch it. Um, but it eventually it became an idea to, hey, I'm going to turn this journal into a book. And then it became, and I'm going to leave it to my kids because I wanted to leave my
Hmm.
story to them.
Okay.
But because it took me so long to write, part two was kind of the post cancer. Like, how did it affect me as the husband I would become, the father I would become, the business leader I would become, how it affected my faith and philanthropy. And so part two really wouldn't have happened had I just finished the book with the journal, say in my 20s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in hindsight, I'm kind of glad it took so long because
So,
part two is like how it impacted my
so
life.
it's not just a story of your cancer journey. It's how you've been able to turn that around to give back, to serve the greater good in some form or another, and how you're putting that out there. One of the
Yeah.
things I one of the things I find very interesting about our conversation that we had, Steve, is you do what I've done some of, and I know my partner here on Cancer and Comedy, her name is Deb. She has done this, but you gave a name to your cancer, and so tell me about that. What's the name you gave to your cancer, and we'll go from there for a minute.
I'm sorry, when you say name to cancer,
You,
What do you mean?
it was some of our conversation. You described Clarence. You used the term
Oh,
Clarence from the movie "It's a Wonderful Life." Is kind of a descriptor
yeah.
of your cancer.
Yeah. So,
Eh,
so as I mentioned, part one was like the cancer and the experience and what led up to it. There's a chapter in my book called "It's a Wonderful Life," and
Okay,
the story behind that is if you and your viewers have seen the movie, it comes out every Christmas. One of the most popular
sure.
Christmas. I had never watched it until my first Christmas post being declared cancer free. So I was coming home from college, my first year at Georgia, and a friend of mine, a new friend I had met in school, had said, "Hey, have you ever seen this movie?" No, I hadn't. I went home and watched it, and it resonated with me after having just been through, a year of hell. And the reason for that is in the movie, the main character George, um, has a lot to be thankful for, but he's always wanting what he doesn't have.
Yeah,
He lives in a small town. He wants to leave the small town. He wants to go experience the world, and a number of things happen. In middle of the movie, he thinks about taking his own life, and he wishes he was dead. And this angel named Clarence that you mentioned
that's right.
comes gives him a wish of, I wish I had never been born. And the second half of the movie is how life would be without him in it. And it just really resonated with me. And that started a perspective of how I viewed cancer. And that cancer was my Clarence, in that it gave me kind of an opportunity to start life over and live it with more gratitude and more appreciation. So I started looking back in hindsight as the experience with cancer as, how can this benefit me? How can the experience provide value in the way that I lead my life? And that movie was the pivot. And so, yeah, when you mention,
Yeah.
I sometimes
Well,
refer to
so
cancer.
there's that metaphor there of Clarence, the angel comes in and kind of gives clarity, if you will. Clarence gives clarity, if you will, to
Yeah,
the character George, and it sounded like this was kind of a moment of direction. You at least had some direction to go, and some meaningfulness in your life, as opposed to a sense of meaninglessness, which I think is something that your book speaks to now, about how people can find a purpose and meaningfulness even in spite of their adversity, be it cancer or something else.
yeah.
I think, yeah, it took you 35 years, as we said here, to complete this book.
Mhm.
And so, tell me about the moment when you finally said, okay, I got to get this done. I got to finish this daggone thing. What was there some pivotal moment? Was there some moment when you just said, this has got to happen? And then you went ahead and got it done?
Yeah, great question. It was a little pandemic we experienced called COVID
Yeah.
that provided was the catalyst for finishing it. The 50, 60% of the book done, maybe 65% of the book done when COVID started. And so COVID, I say COVID for a couple of reasons, Brad. One, as I mentioned, I've always been in sales and leadership. I'm always on a plane almost every week. And so when COVID happened, I was grounded. I wasn't able to travel. So I had a lot more of my evenings free. And we at work, we pivoted to a virtual environment. Also, my kids had both left the house. They were in college. And so that, I didn't have kids' sports and activities and events to go to anymore. But I would say that the themes of COVID, or the way that COVID impacted us in a positive way, or at least the way I looked at it, there were a lot of themes that resonated with my story, such as, life is short, appreciate
Yeah.
what we have. I think for a lot of us, if you were willing to look at some of that, COVID kind of changed our perspective, and there were some benefits, as bad as it was, that came out of that experience. And that's what my book is about. Regardless of what type of adversity, we all go through stuff in life. How can you come out of it and have it impact your life in a more positive way? And so I was looking at COVID as that. Yeah, I was frustrated. I was stuck at home.
Yeah.
We couldn't go out to eat. My daughter's college graduation was kind of ruined by COVID, and she didn't
Yeah.
get to have a ceremony. So there were a lot of things glass half empty you could focus on. but I tried to focus on the positives. And one of those was, I'm going to use this opportunity to finish my book. And so I started telling everybody I've been writing a book and I'm going to finish it. And I would say 90% of the people in my world, close friends and family, knew I was writing a book, but people
Yeah.
at work, acquaintances, they didn't know. And so I think it helps stating a goal. It puts
So,
accountability on
but
yourself.
by going public, you mean just self accountability, self reporting, as it were. And I think it sounded to me like he gave you a sense of urgency. If not now, when? If not me, who? That type of thing. I think that experience, COVID and other things surrounding that, certainly gave things a perspective. I know you mentioned about what your daughter graduating college during that time. I remember my son was in college and 3 months from graduating and had to move home after being out of the house for several years, and that had its own share of dynamics. Let me tell you, he had his graduation ceremonies that I walked across the stage was in our living room. Getting the envelope in the mail. So, but my point about this is I think I call it sometimes called a cancer time when people get that word, you have cancer, and they get a diagnosis. In my case, I was told, well, if you don't do something about this, you got 2 or 3 years. And so that gave me a sense of urgency. I got to do something here, not only for myself, but for any kind of a impact or legacy I may want to have on my grandchildren or anything along that line. And it sounds like this is a part of what you had the incentive of, and it led you to write your book. So tell us again the title of your book, and we're going to talk about that here for a few minutes.
Yeah.
So,
So it's grapefruit. It's a little bit of a play on words, but it's
yeah, that's
GREATFRUIT, all one word. Um, but it came from a friend of mine, actually. I was struggling for 6 months. Again, probably part of the reason it took 37 years to finish this thing. But I was struggling for a title, and a friend of mine read the book, and he's kind of more of a marketing guy. Um, but the surgeon removed a mass the size of a grapefruit out of my neck. So
okay.
it's
All
a
right.
pretty large mass. And then, cancer, basically the message of the book is cancer ended up being a blessing in hindsight. It saved my life, putting me on a better track. And then also it changed, like I said, the ways that I live my life moving forward. So he came up with, grapefruit. And so that's how the title came about.
Yeah, and that's I knew there had to be a story about that somewhere. Are you familiar with maybe you're familiar with the comedian Jim Gaffigan? Are you familiar with his wife Jeannie Gaffigan? Wrote a book called "If Life uh, Life Gives You Pears," something like this. Anyhow, she had cancer, and they took a mass out of her head, brain tumor, the size of a pear. And so the title of her book is whatever. When life gives you bad stuff, make a pear out of it. Like make gives you pears. But it has the same sort of vibe that you're talking about there. And Jim Gaffigan talks about it in some of his comedy routines, and she does too in her book in depth. And so I just reminded me of that. And so it sounds like this effort here in great fruit is your effort then to give something back, to speak something good to the values, to the situation, to the impact you would have on family, your friends, the leadership, business, paying it forward, your family, your spiritual life, all those things. So say a word about that, about how this your kind of your new mission or your new sense of meaningfulness comes out of this.
Yeah. I would say my hope with the book, and I've experienced this. The book was released last March, so it's coming up on a year. But my mission with it, or hope with it, was that people reading it would have a different perspective. I'd say perspective is a big word with the book. It's having a different perspective on some of the worst things that they've been through, not just cancer. I think when I was writing it, my thought was helping cancer patients or cancer survivors in the way that they view the experience, trying to look for the glass half full or the silver linings. Um, since the book came out, though, it's had a big impact on people, not just cancer. A couple examples: had two ladies who both lost their husbands
Yeah,
within last couple of years. It really resonated with them because they're struggling with life, post
right.
um, loss and their grief. And so both of them reached out and it really helped. And then, of course, there's been everybody's impacted by cancer in one way or another, right? You either experienced it yourself or somebody who's been through it. So I've had a lot of those people, lost somebody who went through cancer, or they've experienced cancer. And so that's been really gratifying, is knowing it's making an impact on people and helping them with their perspective and maybe looking at adversity with more of a glass half full
Yeah,
mindset.
love that. For the glass half full reminds me kind of the theme overall of Cancer and Comedy Podcast is kind of seeing things from a bit of a positive perspective. When bad things happen to you, you don't have to go bad with it. And we like to talk about seeing life with hope and humor, with humorous therapy as a part of it. I just wonder, in your experience, in your perspective, did you have anything in your journey that was kind of ironic, or maybe struck you funny, or a kind of a "you got to be kidding me" moment, or where something of this nature kind of helped you cope?
There is. There's a there's a chapter in the book, Brad, that highlights that. So there was when I was diagnosed, I was told there was a 70% chance I wouldn't be able to have children due to the
Hmm.
chemotherapy,
Okay.
and I could have cared less. I was 18 years old, and that was the having kids or even getting married was the
Right.
furthest from my mind. My parents, on the other hand, were very concerned about that. Knew that
Oh,
one day
okay.
that would upset me.
They
And
wanted the
so
grandchildren too, right? So
exactly, exactly. And so anyways, one of the options was that the oncologist presented was going to a sperm bank and having my sperm frozen.
okay.
And so there is a chapter that I debated long and hard about putting in the book.
Okay.
Um, but a
Yeah.
couple friends read it and said it was very funny, and they were like, "You got to put it in there." But it was in Atlanta, and I'll just say this much for hopefully your listeners will get a copy of the book and read it. But there's the scene is, if I can paint the scene for you, I go with my father, which was embarrassing.
Oh gosh.
And then
Okay.
we're sitting in the lobby, and the door swings open, and it's seemed like it was like half of the Georgia Tech football team all wearing their leather jackets. And I think they were all in there to let me say donate maybe for beer
Yes.
money. And I, I was in there under the worst of experiences. So
Oh my
um,
gosh. Wow.
at the time, it was mortifying, ironic. It was mortifying. I was like, what else can kind of go wrong in this journey? Um, Later, when I went off to college and I look back on it as a funny, and there's more that happens with it.
Sure. Oh my gosh.
I
I
don't
can only imagine.
there's more that happens. There's like, that's part one, and then there's a part two of it. Um, but anyways, at the end of the day, I was never able to, I won't spoil why, but I was never able to have my sperm frozen. And
Right.
luckily, the oncologist ended up, I fell into the 30%, or he was wrong, but I ended up having two
Yeah.
beautiful children. So,
Oh, we are sometimes put in these positions. You go, well, how did I get here? Or, in my case, I deal with prostate cancer, which means impetus and other good fun stuff, and all kinds goes along with that. So there is some unfun hilarity that goes along with that one too. Let me tell you. But there's stories to be told. I love that. I'm just trying to imagine you walking into that doctor's office, man, and with your dad. Oh my gosh, I can only imagine. So that's something that kind of gives you a sense of perspective. You got to think about things and go, well, here we go. And you mentioned it before. You got to have perspective on things, and to kind of see things with a little bit of a positive life. And so I would just say just a little bit more about that. Do you think having a perspective uh, from time that's passed and experiences like this gives you kind of a permission to heal in your own way, or maybe to give something back to others from your own unique perspective?
yeah, I think that's occurred in a number of ways. So a couple examples. I think one, um, when after watching It's a Wonderful Life and starting to look back on how did cancer and how could cancer impact me moving forward, I did reflect on, there were seven in my book. There were seven heroes in my life who stood by me and helped me get through that year that I talk about in the book. And and so I think one was one was a nurse who went above and beyond the call of duty, who didn't know me before cancer. Two of them were high school buddies, and then my siblings, but my parents, who I kind of put through their own hell with my behavior as a junior and senior in high school. I reflected back on how great they all were and how much they stood by me. And so I try, when people reach out to me, it could be for somebody could reach out to me for help with an interview or their resume or LinkedIn or something I'm
Yeah.
good at. I enjoy helping others, and I think about that a lot. That there were people who stood by me in my worst moment, and I try to pay that forward. I've participated. I continue to participate and volunteer with a number of cancer organizations. The big one is National Pediatric Cancer Foundation. They're headquartered here in Tampa, where I live. But yeah, just trying to give back and help others. I think that comes from my experience and reflecting on how much people stood by me and helped me get through a horrible time in my life.
So that connection was important there. And what do you think are some lessons learned out of this whole experience that's helped you in your business life and what you do there? Has there been some transferable principles or lessons here?
Yeah, there's a lot. I would say, if I summed it up in one word, it would be empathy. And so,
Okay.
I've managed people for a bulk of my career. I'd say one when I was going through cancer, for a while, when I still had my hair in the beginning, I was going to school part time. I was working part time, and there were probably people I passed every day that had no idea what I was going through. And so, and there were some examples of that where people were shocked when they later learned I was going through chemo and cancer. That always stood out with me. And so I think when I'm managing people and leading teams, I try to lead with empathy because you don't always know what's going on in their personal life. So an example could be a sales performer who's performed at a high level. And I've seen this happen, and there's a dip over time in their performance. There's something going on maybe in their personal life, could be a
Right.
divorce, a loss. So I try to lead with empathy. I think that has helped me with customers, trying to put myself in a potential customer's shoes when I'm
Yeah.
selling something and trying to understand their point of view and what's important to them. But I would say a lot of it comes back to empathy to answer
Yeah.
your question.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's kind of bring this conversation around and begin the process of bringing it in to land the plane. But I always like to have this type of conversation, Steve, with my guests, and that is you mentioned a couple of people who were impacted by your people who had grief in their life and so on. Can you be kind of specific about a person that your book or your story has been helpful? You don't have to give any names if you don't want to, but a story where you've seen some transformation happen in some form or another, or some good thing happen to someone that was partly due to your book or your story.
Yeah, I'll give one. I don't want to use names, but I'll give one. I have a gentleman who I worked with back in my 20s, and we've just kept in touch. Our paths have crossed, and we usually talk a couple times a year and consider him a friend. Um, he had back surgery, and it was pretty severe, and he was laid up for a while. And he read my book while he was laid up with back surgery, and he said it really helped him because he was kind of he was in a victim mindset of like, woe is me, and this is terrible, and why do I have such bad luck? And we talked about my name of my book, Brad being grapefruit. I was
Right.
this close. I was this close to naming the book "Why Me,"
Mm.
because when I was, and, I think any cancer, anybody who's
Yeah.
had cancer or something
Yeah.
terrible in life, usually you go through that "Why me," right?
Sure.
Anytime.
Do kind of the denial bargaining type of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and so this gentleman read my book and said it helped him kind of snap out of that, and it gave him a different perspective, and that he felt gratitude as he was laid up going through this, and realized like there's a lot of people I know or people in the world that are in a much worse situation and dealing with things that are much worse than back surgery, and just said it made, and he's going through something else personal now that he said that I don't want to share, but that he said is really impacting, and the book kind of helped ground him a little bit and more of a glass half full mentality. So
Yeah.
I've had a lot like that, but that was one recently where I got a phone call where
Yeah.
he said, "Hey, this really kind of helped me through something."
Well,
So
well, that's awesome. I think the just to you have this story of basically your life is heading over the cliff when you're young, you get the cancer diagnosis. Who knows what your life would attract to be if you hadn't had cancer? It would probably be much different than it is now. I think it'd be fair to say, don't you think so? And
I think I would have died. Yeah, I think I
yeah,
would have. I think it was that bad. I was heading down a. I don't know that I'd still be here
well,
had I not.
there's there's that, and that's a so that is as dramatic a transition as you can take, pretty much. And then you told the story about this friend in your life and other people who've been impacted by what you're talking about. And I think I love what you're saying here, Steve, about perspective. That question I've asked it. I mean, almost every cancer impacted person. That why me? But yeah, I think you kind of changed it around. Why not me? And what am I going to do about it? And I think and and I think you can do that. And I think you are doing that without being preachy or dismissive of the situation people are in, and to give something back because you've lived the walk, for 58 years now, or since you returned 18 and to now, and that's an awesome thing. So, any kind of final words of encouragement or advice? Or anything you'd want to share with somebody who may be listening to our voices here today, who's kind of going through that why me, and to go to the why not me? Any words of encouragement you may have?
Yeah, it's tough. I don't know that I thought that much. I don't know that I had that thought very much when I was going through it. But I would say whether you're currently in the midst of something, but definitely as you're coming out of it, trying to look at like how can that experience help me in a positive way? How can it change my mindset? How can it change the way I live my life? And it helps me a lot doing that. And I've had relatives that have been through cancer, and some handled it very well, and some were kind of bitter and angry for a long period of time. And I just would encourage, I guess, people listening to this to find a way to try to grow and live a better life coming out of whatever it is. Right? It's not a question of if; it's when we're going to go through something
Right.
traumatic. We all go through stuff in our life, and so just trying to come out of that with a growth mindset um, can only help and help you live a better life.
Yeah, I love that. It's this perspective you're talking about. We like to talk around here about coping with hope and humor. With hope and humor. Well, our guest today, Steve Garrity. Steve, tell us how people can find your book or find out more about you.
Yeah, so you mentioned stevegarrity.com, and again, it's spelled Garraty, but that's my website. There's a link to the book on Amazon. Amazon owns about 80% of all book sales in the world, but it's on Amazon. It's on Barnes and Nobles. So pretty much anywhere online that you can buy books. It's in audio, paperback, hardback, and ebook. So it's pretty much in all formats.
Well, you can find him, as you said, at stevegarrity.com. His name's Steve Garrity, the author of Great Fruit, How Cancer Led to Living a More Fruitful Life. And we thank you for being our guest today on the Cancer and Comedy Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Brad.
Close. Awesome, man. Way to go. Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
good. Good, good, good. Well, I'll have this out. It'll be 3 or 4 weeks. When it goes out, I'll send you an email, and then we just ask you to share it in your social media or whatever you do
Yeah.
that way. Good stuff here. I wish you well in the book. It's been out about a year, and that's I've got a book coming out later on this year about my cancer story, and I use the metaphor of the grapefruit. I use the metaphor of dancing. In my story, my 2 granddaughters were 5 and 2 at the time when I was diagnosed 3 years ago, Christmas time. They we went out to lunch shortly with McDonald's, Happy Meals, and so on with them shortly after I was diagnosed. I was in a bad mood because of what was happening, and they started laughing and giggling at something stupid I said, and had a giggle fit. Maybe started giggling, and that sort of gave me the idea of. And then I had a vision of my 2 granddaughters like dancing at their weddings 20 years from now, things like that. So my metaphor, they've titled my book is Dancing at My Granddaughter's Wedding. And so it's kind of my story as well from not unlike yours, cancer story. And then my teaching points have helped people to cope with hope and humor. That's my thing. So, well, good. So that's
Yeah, I have, sorry, 2 quick questions for you. Did we meet on, I have what's the social app? I have a social app. One is for Thomas Umstattd with Author Media, and the other one is Man Up to Cancer. Did we meet through Author Media?
I think Author Media, yeah.
Okay, because I think you reached out to me. So I did want to ask, there's a gentleman who's got a book coming out. He had, colon cancer.
Right.
And he's got a book coming out. It's more of like actually, his book's more about being an advocate, and he's very big on. So he runs the Florida. Have you ever heard of Man Up to Cancer?
Yes, I have. In fact, I haven't gone on it, but I've looked at their website before and things like that. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say he runs the Florida chapter, and I had he did like a meetup in Tampa for Man Up to Cancer, and I met him in person for the first time yesterday. But anyways, if I can make an introduction,
sure.
if you're interested.
Well, we do that type. I do fundraisers for cancer here locally, and other things that I do, and I'm connected with some of the cancer organizations and hospitals and things of that nature. And so I'm always looking for good guests and to also be guest on other people's podcasts, that type of thing as well. And especially if he's got a book coming out, that's what I like to hear, or something, or a course or something like that. Then I like
and I
to.
think he runs a podcast as well, Brad. I think he told me that yesterday. So maybe you guys can.
Yeah.
I'll just make the introduction.
If you just make an introduction, that would be fine. And that's what I'm always looking for that. I publish this podcast about once a week, and I have a co-host who I work with, and she's a breast cancer survivor, and I'm a prostate cancer survivor. So what I do then is we have a little bit of give and take as before the interview, and I've sent her I'll send her our interview, and she comments on it. We both comment on my conversation with you. Sometimes she does a conversation, like particularly if it's a breast cancer person, something like that. She does those interviews, but it's not always cancer either. It's because we kind of have broadened the understanding of cancer. Cancer, as you know, is basically anything that eats you alive. Cells multiplying, eat you alive. So that can be, mental health. It could be divorce. It can be alcoholism. It could be any number of things that can eat you alive. So we take that, and then our response to it is coping. How do we cope as a coping organism? So what we like to say, and not just a mechanism. Coping mechanism is kind of the mechanical, plug, I'm going to work out more or whatever it is. Those are important things to do, but how do you change the inside and out? And it's a living thing. So that's kind of some of the premises that we work on. And so we have we do, I just met with her the other day where I'm doing a book and she's got a coaching program. And so we're looking to kind of expand our footprint into cancer and adversity oriented things that are both coaching courses and, the podcast, books, keynote speeches, the whole bit. That's what we're looking to do. So I'm always looking to make connections with other people who are doing something. And,
I'll introduce you to him. His name's Tim McDonald, but I'll send out an email and just describe why I'm introducing both of you.
Awesome. That'd be great. And I wish you well in your book. It's been out for a year. Is it doing okay? Or you've been?
It's done well. It's slowed down a lot recently. I'm in software sales, and we just finished our fourth quarter. So I did very little in book marketing just because I was working a lot of hours. But it's done well. It's I've been on, I don't know, maybe 15 podcasts or so. I got some more coming out.
Did you follow Umstattd's marketing plan, that type of thing he does?
I used a lot of it. Yeah. I didn't do the 5-year plan. That's like his only course I haven't taken, but I followed a lot of his stuff. A lot of his advice for sure. You?
Uh, but basically, I bought his course a couple of years ago when I was working on a different book before my cancer, and so the cancer came, and so I could have changed everything. So I wrote a new book, and it's I'm reworking it now. I'm in my second, editing second time around, that kind of stuff now. But yes, I will use that. But I was working to get the book done first, and now is
Yeah.
the time. Now basically is the time to lean into the market side of it.
And you're self-publishing?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's what I'm going to do. And then I took a similar course to his with basically about self-publishing this past fall, and so I'm using that. And then I also work with another guy. I have of the 120 or so episodes of this podcast. So I work with another friend of mine, a business partner of mine, where we have a process to take like podcast and or blog posts, other stuff, and I'll run it through an AI process to help you to, process a lot of data to put into a book or course, this kind of thing. So we've been working on that kind of thing too, because that's I have I'm a former pastor, so I work with some pastors, and so we're taking some sermons people have, putting them through a process here as well. So, yeah, I got several things going on here, but that's the idea is to get. I'd like to put out once I get this first book out the door. I think I'll have it down to do book a year, maybe two a year, or something like that. I'm retired. Now. This is kind of what I want to lean into now. That's kind
Yeah.
of what I'm doing.
Yeah,
So,
Brad, I wish, I'm 50. I said on your show, I'm 58. But I there were many times since I published my book that I wish I was retired because I did all this stuff in my spare time. So pretty much eight to five every day. I'm working pretty hard.
yeah,
Um,
I get that. I retired. I'm 67, so I retired 4 years ago when I was 63, and haven't regretted it at all. This is just kind of what I lean into, and I do. My side gig is I help produce podcasts for other people, these other pastors and so on. So I make a little money that way. It's fine for what I do, and then I'm hoping to, do well enough in the book to make it worthwhile. But it's more. I also see it as a mission, for myself and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
that's
I'm
that's what.
definitely in the red on the book. I've sold over 1,000 copies of the book, but I'm still have not recouped what I spent. I hired an expensive developmental editor. I hired a not cheap copy editor. Hired somebody to do my website. So because I'm working full time, I
Yeah,
had to outsource a lot of the stuff, and so yeah, I still have not recouped my expense. But I didn't really write it to make I wanted to get the message out and try to
yeah,
make positive impact on people. But yeah, it's been good. But
yeah.
yeah, still in the red on my expenses versus revenue.
Well, hopefully you can work out the retirement thing at an appropriate time, and if you want to, lean into this stuff if you want to. So good.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna let you go, man. I got take care. Blessings on you. You got a great story to tell. Keep sharing it, and I'll about 3 or 4 weeks from now, you'll hear from me again about it going live. Okay.
Oh, sounds great. Thanks, Brad.
Blessings on you, man. Take it easy.
All right. Sure. Bye bye.